5,000 alien warriors landed on Earth to conquer us. 47 seconds later, every single one was dead, crushed by the one weapon they never saw coming: gravity. Welcome to the channel where humanity's weirdest traits become our greatest weapons. I'm your narrator, bringing you the best HFY stories from across the galaxy. Tales where humans aren't the most advanced species, or the most numerous, or the most technologically superior. We're just the ones who refuse to quit. The ones who evolved in environments that would kill softer species. The ones who turn disadvantages into advantages and make the galaxy respect us not despite our differences, but because of them. If you love stories where humanity dominates through sheer determination, hit subscribe. Now, let's get into today's story. The observation fleet hung above Earth like a scalpel poised over flesh. For 3 cycles they had watched, studied, catalogued every weakness of a species that called this dense, violent world home. Commander Zarthik stood on the bridge of the Dominion's Fong, his exoskeleton clicking softly as he shifted his weight across chitinous legs designed for the 0.4G worlds of the Krynn expanse. Behind him, holographic displays painted the blue marble below in tactical overlays, population centers, military installations, resource deposits. All of it ripe. All of it theirs. Atmospheric composition confirmed, his scanner officer reported, her vocal sac fluttering with excitement. Oxygen-nitrogen mixture. 21% O2. Breathable without modification. Zarthik's mandibles spread in what his species considered a smile. Perfect. The Krynn Hegemony had conquered 417 worlds across 9 spiral arms. They had crushed the silicon-based Vrex. They had broken the hive minds of Talasorn III. They had made the aquatic Drell beg for mercy in their own oceans. And now Earth. Intelligence reports painted humanity as soft, fractured, a species that fought itself more than any external threat. Their technology was primitive, barely achieving fusion, still bound to chemical propulsion, decades away from even rudimentary FTL. They had no kinetic shields, no plasma weaponry, no neural networks linking their warriors into unified battle consciousness. Gravitational constant. Zarthik asked, though he'd memorized the data cycles ago. 9.8 meters per second squared, came the response. Significantly above standard. Above standard. The phrase didn't carry weight in his mind. The Hegemony had landed on 1.2G worlds before. Uncomfortable, yes. Requiring exoskeletal support, certainly. But manageable. Prepare the landing force, Zarthik commanded. First wave, 5,000 shock troops. Deployment zone, their largest population center. Target the structures they call New York. We will demonstrate superiority before their leadership councils. By nightfall, their surrender will be transmitted across every frequency they possess. The bridge thrummed with activity. Below, in the deployment bays, Krynn warriors, the finest the Hegemony had bred, sealed their combat shells and checked their plasma weapons. Each stood 9 feet tall in their armor, trained from hatching in the art of domination. They had stormed fortresses. They had walked through gunfire that would liquefy lesser species. Earth would fall in hours. Zarthik watched the deployment pods launch from the Dominion's Fong's ventral bays, 5,000 meteors wrapped in heat shielding, screaming toward the planet below. He felt the familiar rush of conquest approaching, the anticipation of watching another world kneel. The pods punched through the atmosphere, their trajectories calculated with microsecond precision. Inside each craft, warriors stood in harness, weapons primed, combat stimulants flooding their systems. They had done this hundreds of times. The routine was sacred: atmospheric entry, deceleration, ground impact, deployment, domination. The first pod struck Central Park at 0847 local time. Impact foam cushioned the landing. Hydraulics hissed as the door blew outward. Commander Vekril was first out, as tradition demanded. His plasma rifle was raised, his 4 eyes scanning for targets, his breathing apparatus filtering Earth's air through scrubbers that... His legs snapped. Not bent. Not strained. Snapped. The sound was like a tree branch breaking under ice. Vekril had one instant to process confusion before his second leg folded backward, the chitinous structure designed for 0.4G simply collapsing under the weight of his own body amplified by Earth's gravitational field. He hit the ground, and his exoskeleton shattered. Behind him, the second warrior stepped out. Her right leg exploded into fragments before her foot touched soil. She toppled forward, her arm breaking as it tried to catch her fall, bones designed for low-gravity worlds simply disintegrating under the pressure of 9.8 meters per second squared of constant, unrelenting acceleration. The third warrior made it 2 steps before his spine compressed, vertebrae designed to support a lightweight frame in gentle gravity pulverizing under the monstrous pull of Earth's mass. The fourth didn't even leave the pod. The angle of descent had already micro-fractured his skeletal structure. When he tried to stand, his pelvis crumbled like ancient pottery. Across Central Park, across Manhattan, across every deployment zone on Earth, 5,000 landing pods opened. And 5,000 warriors broke. Not fell, not collapsed, broke, like glass figures dropped on concrete, like porcelain soldiers thrown against stone. Their bodies, their magnificent war-bred bodies, had no frame of reference for this. The Krynn had evolved on a moon with gentle gravity. They had conquered worlds with similar conditions. They had augmented themselves with armor and exoskeletons, never imagining a planet where the baseline gravitational pull was double what their biology could withstand. On the Dominion's Fong, Zarthik watched his tactical display turn red. Every single marker. Status report, he shrieked, his vocal sac distending in panic. Commander, the warriors, their medical telemetry shows catastrophic skeletal failure across the entire landing force. That's impossible. The gravity, Commander. The gravity. Their bodies can't support themselves. They're being crushed by their own weight. Zarthik stared at the screen. At 5,000 red markers that had been green 30 seconds ago. At the live feeds showing his finest warriors writhing on the ground, their limbs twisted at angles biology never intended, their screams transmitted across quantum links directly into his audio cortex. And then he saw the humans. They had emerged from their structures, these soft bipeds wrapped in primitive fabrics. They were staring at the Krynn warriors with expressions Zarthik's translator struggled to interpret. Not fear. Not awe. Confusion. A human female approached one of his warriors, approached casually, like she was observing something mildly interesting on her morning walk. The warrior tried to raise his plasma rifle, but his arm shattered from the attempt. She crouched down, her face inches from his, and said something the translators picked up. "Are you okay?" The question was absurd. Insulting. His warrior was dying, crushed by this death world's gravitational field, and this primitive was asking if he was okay like he'd tripped on a sidewalk. Another human, a male in what appeared to be running attire, moisture glistening on his skin, jogged past a cluster of broken Krynn warriors without breaking stride. He had small devices in his ears, his head nodding to some rhythm, utterly unconcerned with the alien warriors who had come to conquer his world and now lay shattered at his feet. "Commander," his scanner officer whispered. "The humans, they're adapted to this gravity. They've evolved here. This is their normal." The revelation hit Zarthik like a kinetic round. Humans didn't live on a 1G world despite hardship. They lived on a 1G world because they'd been forged by it. Every step they took required musculature his species would consider enhanced. Every movement demanded skeletal density that would be classified as armored on any civilized world. These beings walked around every day under a gravitational load that would crush a Krynn warrior, and they called it normal. They jogged in it for recreation. "Pull them back," Zarthik ordered. "Emergency extraction. Get medical shuttles down there." "Commander, the shuttles will experience the same gravitational load. Our pilots." "Then use drones. Remote operation. Get our warriors off that planet." But it was already too late for most of them. The ones who had tried to move, tried to fight, tried to crawl, their attempts had only accelerated their destruction. Muscles tearing from bone, organs compressing, exoskeletons designed for efficiency now acting as prisons, holding shattered bodies in shapes that no longer worked. And the humans kept emerging, kept walking past. A few pulled out their communication devices and began recording, creating visual documentation of the failed invasion. Some laughed, actually laughed, at the sight of the galaxy's most feared warriors reduced to broken husks. One human, a young male, walked up to a dying Krynn warrior and posed beside him, holding up 2 fingers in some cultural gesture while his companion took a photograph. Zarthik felt something he'd never experienced in 417 conquests: humiliation. But worse was coming. Because 18 hours after the failed landing, after 93% of his warriors had died from gravitational stress or been euthanized by mercy drones, Earth's fragmented governments managed to do something unprecedented. They unified. Every nation, Every faction, every competing ideology looked at the shattered remains of an alien invasion force destroyed not by weapons, but by simply existing on Earth's surface, and they understood something profound. Humanity's weakness was humanity's greatest strength. The United Nations called it the gravitational advantage doctrine. Military theorists called it the heavy world defense paradigm. Scientists called it evolutionary adaptation to extreme environmental conditions. Soldiers called it being born with weighted training that never turned off. Zarthik received the transmission 6 cycles later. It came from a human who identified herself as Secretary General Chun. She spoke with the casual confidence of someone who had just watched an existential threat neutralize itself. Commander Zarthik of the Krynn Hegemony, she began, her image filling his view screen. We've recovered your surviving warriors. They're receiving medical care. We'll return them to you, along with a message. She leaned forward, and Zarthik saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. You conquered 417 worlds. You dominated species across 9 spiral arms. You built an empire on the assumption that you were the apex predators of the galaxy. She smiled. You never met a species that evolved in double your gravity. You never faced warriors who train their entire lives in conditions you can't survive. You never considered that somewhere out there a species might be forged by their world instead of coddled by it. Behind her, Zarthik could see a human military facility. Soldiers running in formation, carrying equipment, moving with a casual grace that his biomechanics officers had calculated should be impossible at that gravitational load. Every human on this planet, Chun continued, is wearing what you would consider a gravity suit. Every child who learns to walk is performing strength training your elite warriors couldn't complete. Every person who climbs a flight of stairs is doing what your species would require hydraulic assistance to accomplish. She stood, and even that simple motion, rising from a seated position under 1G, carried a threat. So here's our message, Commander. Tell the hegemony. Tell the galaxy. Tell every species that looks at Earth and sees a primitive world ripe for conquest. Her smile widened. We didn't evolve on an easy world. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day just by existing. Our gravity didn't give us a choice, get strong or die. And we got very strong. She gestured to something off-screen, and a human soldier walked into frame carrying a Krynn plasma rifle in one hand like it weighed nothing, a weapon Zarthik knew required a full exoskeletal harness to operate effectively. We've examined your technology, Chun said. It's impressive. Advanced. Your plasma weapons are elegant. Your ships are sophisticated. Your armor is well designed. She paused. But you never had to be strong. You built tools to compensate for your weakness. You engineered solutions to avoid challenge. You conquered worlds that couldn't fight back against your technology. The soldier behind her raised the plasma rifle one-handed and fired it, without bracing, without support, absorbing the recoil that would have torn a Krynn warrior's arm from its socket. We don't have your technology, Chun said softly. Not yet. But we have something you'll never have, Commander. Something you can't build or engineer or conquer. She leaned close to the camera. We have 4 billion years of evolution on a world that forced us to become strong enough to survive it. You trained your warriors in artificial gravity. We were born in it. You study it as a hazard. We call a home. The transmission ended. Zarthik stood on his bridge, staring at the blank screen, feeling the eyes of his crew upon him. The Krynn Hegemony had suffered its first defeat. Not through superior firepower. Not through tactical genius. Not through courage or skill. Through gravity. Through the simple, undeniable fact that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history in a crucible his species couldn't survive. Commander, his navigator said quietly. New orders. Zarthik looked at Earth, that blue marble hanging in space, that death world wrapped in oceans and clouds, that forge of a species his people had dismissed as primitive. Mark it, he said, his voice hollow. Classification, death world. Gravity, extreme. Native species, enhanced. Threat level. He paused, searching for a word in his language that could encompass what he'd witnessed. Maximum. And add a note to the hegemony database. Add it to every chart, every star map, every tactical assessment from here to the core. What note, Commander? Zarthik's mandibles clicked once, a gesture of acknowledgement, of respect, of fear. Never invade a species that evolved in their own gravity well. They've been training for war since before they could walk. The Dominion's Fong turned away from Earth, its engines burning toward the outer system, toward the jump point, toward home. Behind it, on the blue world below, 7 billion humans went about their day. Walking, running, living, existing in the gravity field that had just ended an invasion without firing a shot. And somewhere in the Pentagon, in a secure briefing room, Secretary General Chun looked at the assembled military leaders of Earth's nations and said 5 words that would reshape human history. Gentlemen, we have an advantage. 3 years later, the first human ship entered Krynn space. It was crewed by hegemony standards, fusion-driven, kinetically shielded with ablative armor, armed with weapons that were primitive compared to plasma arrays and quantum disruptors. But it carried a crew, a human crew. When the UNSS Determination docked with a Krynn station for first contact negotiations, the airlock opened and Captain Maria Rodriguez walked out. In 1.2 G, without assistance, without strain, she crossed to the Krynn delegation, who watched from the safety of their 0.4 G environment through a transparent barrier, and smiled. Secretary General Chun sends her regards, Rodriguez said. And an offer. Humanity is interested in joining the galactic community. We have resources. We have innovation. We have determination. She paused, letting them see her standing comfortably in gravity that would kill them. And if anyone ever threatens Earth or her allies, she continued softly, they'll learn what it means to fight a species that was born in the heaviest training environment in the known galaxy. The Krynn delegation said nothing. They simply updated their database. Species, humanity. Homeworld, Earth. Classification, Deathworld apex predators. Status, never engage militarily. And across the galaxy, as word spread of the species that defeated an invasion fleet with nothing but their own planet's gravity, other civilizations looked at Earth with new understanding. Not as a primitive backwater, not as easy prey, but as the home of warriors who had spent 4 billion years evolving in a gravitational crucible that would crush lesser species. Years later, when human marines stormed a pirate station in the outer reaches, the Krynn commander, who had survived Earth's gravity, who had been pulled from the wreckage of his invasion, healed, and returned home, watched the footage. He watched humans move through corridors in combat armor that weighed more than a Krynn warrior's entire body mass. He watched them carry weapons designed for tripod mounts as personal firearms. He watched them breach reinforced doors by simply running through them. And he understood with perfect clarity what Earth had been trying to teach the galaxy. Humanity didn't need to be the most advanced species. They just needed to be the strongest. And on a death world spinning at the bottom of a gravity well that would kill most spacefaring races, strength wasn't optional. It was survival. The former commander, now an instructor at the Krynn Military Academy, turned to his students and displayed the image of a human soldier standing on Earth, looking up at the stars. This, he said quietly, is what evolution looks like when a planet refuses to be merciful. Remember it, respect it, and never, ever make the mistake we made. One student raised a foreclaw. What mistake, instructor? The old warrior's mandibles clicked in something that might have been a laugh. We assumed that because they hadn't left their gravity well, they were trapped by it. He zoomed in on the human's face, on the smile, on the confidence, on the absolute certainty in those eyes. We were wrong. They weren't trapped in their gravity. The image changed to show human ships, dozens of them now, spreading across local space, crewed by beings who walked in death world gravity and called it normal. We were trapped in a universe where they existed. The lecture ended, the students left, and the old commander sat alone in the darkness, looking at Earth's coordinates on the star map, at that blue in the darkness, at the world that had broken his army with nothing but its own mass. And he thought, humanity didn't need weapons to defeat us. They just needed to be themselves. And that was terrifying enough. The galaxy thought Earth was an easy target, a primitive world with divided nations and outdated technology. They were right about the technology. They were dead wrong about everything else. Because humanity's real weapon isn't our ships or our guns. It's 4 billion years of evolution on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We didn't just survive Earth's gravity. We mastered it. We became it. And now the galaxy knows, you don't invade a death world species. You negotiate with them. If you want more stories of humanity making the galaxy regret underestimating us, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Next video drops in 3 days, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when humans discover the galaxy's most advanced species has never experienced physical pain. Until then, remember, We're not trapped in the universe with them. They're trapped in the universe with us.